Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a world older than time itself. A place where gods don't yet exist, and the stars haven't even figured out where to shine. You're floating in a thick, black nothingness. No sky, no ground. Just a cosmic soup of almost something spinning in the dark. It's kinda beautiful, if you ignore the fact that you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in chaos, not the messy room kind, but the primordial void. Nothing has been born yet, not even time. No sun, no earth, no annoying daylight savings. Then, out of nowhere, like someone opened the world's weirdest pop-up book, beings start appearing. First comes Gaia, Mother Earth, who just appears. No drama, no explosion. She's the land, the hills, the rich soil beneath your future sandals. Then there's Tartarus, the yawning underworld chasm. Super cozy. Great Airbnb reviews if you're into eternal punishment. Next, Eros, love incarnate. Not Cupid with a bow, but the raw cosmic urge to connect things. Historians still argue whether Eros was a force of attraction or just a metaphor for let's make the universe spicy. Then we get Nyx, the personification of night, gliding through the void like velvet dipped in shadow. She's quiet, unsettling, and according to one fringe story, even scared Zeus later on. Not many can say that and mean it. Gaia, being the multitasker she is, gives birth to Uranus, the sky, and stretches him over herself like a starry blanket. Romantic, sure, until Uranus gets real clingy and refuses to let any of their children leave her womb. Yes, that's as uncomfortable as it sounds. Their kids? Oh, just a casual nightmare lineup. The Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatonchires, aka the 100-handed giants who could probably juggle your entire extended family. Uranus takes one look at these monstrous bundles of joy and goes full nope, locking them deep inside Gaia. You're now standing in the middle of a cosmic domestic dispute. Gaia, understandably annoyed, creates a giant sickle, yes, the tool and the metaphor, and asks her kids to use it on Dad. Only Cronus, the youngest Titan, says, "Sure, I'll castrate my dad. Sounds like a fun weekend." The moment arrives, Cronus waits for Uranus to swoop down for another overbearing parenting moment, then snip, just like that. The sky god loses more than just his temper. Now, here's the weird part. Uranus's blood drops onto the earth, and boom, more creatures. The Erinyes, Furies, spirits of vengeance. The giants, because clearly we needed more of those. And from the sea, foam churned up by his severed bits. Yes, those rises Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. You're welcome. Cronus takes over as cosmic CEO. He frees his Titan siblings and sets up shop on Earth, ushering in what poets call the Golden Age. No suffering, no war. People don't even need to work. They just nap and snack. Basically a toddler's dream life. But Cronus has a little anxiety problem. Gaia and Uranus told him, "One of your kids will overthrow you too." So he gets proactive. Every time his wife Rhea gives birth, he swallows the baby whole. No bib, no chewing, just gulp, newborn gods down the hatch. And here you are again, watching another god spiral into paranoia. Rhea, fed up and probably missing her kids, tricks Cronus by swapping baby number 6 with a rock wrapped in a blanket. The real baby, Zeus, gets hidden away in a cave on the island of Crete. Tiny Zeus grows up fed by a magical goat named Amalthea. Her horns drip with ambrosia, and her hide later becomes Zeus's trusty shield. Fringe myth says her bleats were drowned out by soldiers banging swords on their shields so Cronus wouldn't hear her. Nice bit of ancient noise-canceling tech. Meanwhile, the rock baby Cronus, swallowed, still sitting heavy in his celestial stomach. Indigestion of the gods. But the wheel of fate's turning again. Zeus isn't going to stay hidden forever. The next storm is coming, and it's going to shatter more than just family dinners. You're crouched in the shadows of Mount Ida, watching little Zeus grow into a teen god with thunder in his veins and a grudge in his heart. He's not the quiet, contemplative type, more like the wait until I'm older, then I'll wreck everything type. And honestly, who could blame him? His dad swallowed all his siblings. That's not just bad parenting, it's a therapy lifetime package. Eventually, Zeus decides it's time to stage a divine intervention. With help from Metis, a clever titaness and the original goddess of cunning, he brews a special potion designed to trigger some serious vomit. Romantic, right? Zeus waltzes into Cronus' domain, disguised as a cupbearer, and hands him a glowing goblet. Cronus gulps it down. Classic mistake. Next thing you know, he's doubling over and vomiting up fully grown gods like a bad magic trick in reverse. First Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades, and finally Poseidon. Boom, family reunion, Olympian style. With his siblings finally free and presumably a little traumatized, Zeus leads the charge to overthrow the Titans. But it's not just a quick skirmish. This war, it lasts 10 years. The Titanomachy, they call it. You're in the middle of a battlefield where mountains are thrown like snowballs and lightning rains from the sky. The air smells like ash and ambition. Here's your historical nugget. Ancient Greeks really believed Mount Olympus had been the actual war headquarters, part of why it became a sacred site. To this day, some climbers report feeling a weird presence up there. Could be the altitude, or leftover Titan resentment. The Titans, led by Cronus, dig in. But Zeus has an edge. He frees the Cyclopes and Hecaton Kyres, the monstrous siblings Cronus had locked away. As thanks, the Cyclopes forge Zeus's signature weapon, the Thunderbolt. Not a cute spark. We're talking full-blown, mountain-shattering plasma with a grudge. Meanwhile, Poseidon receives his trident and Hades scores a pitch-black helmet that makes him invisible, like the world's most terrifying introvert. Still, historians debate whether the Titanomachy symbolizes real ancient shifts, perhaps the cultural takeover of older Earth deities by a more patriarchal sky god system. Or maybe people just really liked stories where dads get overthrown. Fair play, the turning point, the 100-handed giants. Picture a single being throwing 50 boulders per second, ads screaming, lots of it. Finally, the Titans fall. Cronus is defeated, though what happens next depends on the version you're listening to. In some myths, Cronus is chopped into bits and tossed into Tartarus. In others, he's just imprisoned forever down there, brooding in the world's worst man cave. A few fringe sources say he was later forgiven and made ruler of a peaceful afterlife zone called Elysium. Yeah, hard to picture the guy who ate babies running a retirement spa. But mythology is weird like that. Zeus doesn't stop there. He and his siblings draw lots for who gets what. Zeus wins the sky. Poseidon gets the sea. Hades? He pulls the underworld. Tough luck. You picture him quietly nodding, then vanishing into the shadows, muttering something about property rights. With the Titans defeated and the new gods settled in, Mount Olympus is officially the divine HQ. They build golden palaces that float above the clouds and throw feasts with nectar and ambrosia. Immortality is less about not dying and more about never needing to wash dishes. You'd think, after all that, things would settle down. But welcome to Olympus, where every family member is either passive-aggressively plotting or dramatically declaring eternal vengeance over minor inconveniences. Zeus, now the big guy, starts behaving like a mix between a frat president and a cunning politician. He makes oaths, breaks them, and visits mortal women in increasingly bizarre disguises. Golden rain, a swan, even a bull. No, seriously, a bull. Mythologists still debate whether these forms were metaphors or just ancient storytelling doing its surreal thing. Hera, his sister and wife, yes, both, is not amused. Known for her epic jealousy, she turns rivals into cows, tortures demigod kids, and holds one of the longest grudges in recorded mythology. You almost admire the consistency. But even as Olympus finds its rhythm, the world below is still raw and strange. Creatures of chaos still roam, and the balance of power is precarious. Gaia, who's had just about enough of her grandchildren hurling thunder at each other, births Typhon, a final monster so big and wild, it makes the Titans look like toddlers on tricycles. Typhon rises like a living volcano, his head brushing the stars, his 100 snake legs slithering across continents. You feel the tremor in your bones. Even the gods panic. Some flee to Egypt, shape-shifting into animals. One myth says this is how the Egyptian pantheon got its animal heads. Definitely a stretch, but a fun one. Only Zeus stands firm. The final clash is volcanic. Thunder against hurricane, lightning against lava. The battle shakes the earth so violently it leaves scars. In legend, and maybe even in the landscape. There are ancient stories of craters and canyons born from this god versus monster clash. In the end, Zeus wins, barely. He hurls Typhon into Tartarus, some say beneath Mount Etna, where his writhing causes the volcano's eruptions. A poetic kind of prison. Peace? Not quite. But for now, Zeus reigns supreme. Olympus is stable. Well, mostly. There's still a lot of drama ahead. You lean back, soothed by the lull after all the chaos. For a brief moment, the cosmos hums with quiet, and the gods gaze down from their golden halls, content. But trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. You're perched at the edge of a marble balcony, high on Mount Olympus, legs dangling over the clouds, when Zeus cracks his knuckles and decides it's time to really lock in his authority. Sure, he's king of the gods now, but ruling an immortal, dysfunctional family isn't exactly smooth sailing, especially when your first move was to throw half your relatives into a bottomless pit. The Titans are locked in Tartarus, guarded by the 100-handed giants, but Gaia, remember her, is still furious. You can almost hear her sighing every time Zeus makes a questionable choice, and she's got one last grandchild ready to stir things up. But before that chaos brews again, Zeus figures he should start planting the roots of his divine dynasty. And what better way to do that than marrying his sister? Yep, Hera, the goddess of marriage herself. Ancient Greeks really leaned into that whole keep it in the family concept. You brace yourself as they tie the immortal knot in a wedding so grand it's said the earth bloomed spontaneously. Elephants didn't exist yet, but if they had, there would have been a whole procession. Hera becomes queen of the gods, regal, proud, with a side eye sharp enough to pierce armor. She's deeply respected, but let's be honest, she spends about 70% of her time cleaning up after Zeus's romantic messes. The rest? Plotting revenge on anyone who gets too close to him. You'd think being immortal would mellow someone out, not Hera. While the newlyweds bicker in the clouds, Zeus starts organizing the world below. First, the seas. He gives Poseidon domain over them. The god of earthquakes, horses, and really dramatic tridents, Poseidon isn't always balanced. One moment he's making springs gush from the earth, the next he's turning ships into splinters. Historians still argue whether Poseidon's unpredictable temperament was a reflection of actual ancient seafaring fears, or just another example of Olympian flair for drama. Then there's Hades, who gets the underworld, a place of shadows, echoes, and rules, lots of rules. Contrary to popular belief, he isn't evil. He's actually kind of organized, just stern, and maybe not the best at parties. He builds Elysium for heroes and Tartarus for villains, with Asphodel in between for average souls who never made a splash either way. Fringe myth says he once tried letting everyone go free just to see what would happen. Spoiler, it did not go well. Meanwhile, the Earth, Gaia herself, is still neutral territory. The humans haven't shown up yet, but the gods are getting restless. So, Zeus fills the world with lesser deities, nymphs, dryads, river gods, and creatures with a flair for poetry, chaos, and frolicking. You catch a glimpse of Pan, the goat-legged god of wild places, playing his flute in the hills, scaring shepherds just for fun. Then comes a big celestial makeover, the construction of Mount Olympus as the ultimate divine high-rise. 12 Olympians take up permanent residence. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Hermes. Yes, that's more than 12 names, because the lineup rotates more than a reality showcast. They eat ambrosia, drink nectar, and never age. You imagine sitting in on one of their dinners. Hephaestus is showing off some weird golden robot he made. Ares is flexing at the reflection pool, and Hermes is pocketing forks for no reason. Immortal doesn't always mean mature, but things aren't all sunshine and divine gossip. There are cracks forming. Giants still lurk beyond the horizon. Sea monsters coil in the deep. And Zeus knows The world isn't done rebelling yet. To ensure loyalty and prevent another uprising, Zeus turns to his favorite strategy, marrying off gods and forging alliances. Hephaestus, the lamed god of fire and craft, gets paired with Aphrodite, goddess of beauty. She's not exactly thrilled. Ares, god of war, quickly becomes her favorite gym partner, and, well, you can imagine the mess. Meanwhile, the mortal world is still in beta. No humans yet, just a few scattered nature spirits and mythic beasts testing the terrain. Zeus starts laying the foundation for humanity's arrival, but first, he wants order. So he calls in Themis, goddess of divine law, and sets up a cosmic rulebook. Oaths must be honored, guest-host relationships are sacred, and no one may challenge the hierarchy without consequences. You imagine a celestial HR handbook, full of vague divine warnings. And yet, even with these rules, Olympus is a ticking clock. Every god has their own agenda. Every mountain breeze seems to carry a whisper of rebellion. One night, a shadow creeps across the floor of Zeus's throne room. It's Prometheus, a titan who had taken Zeus's side in the war. He walks like he knows too much, and in fact, he does. He's seen what's coming. The humans, the defiance, the fire. But that's a story for next time. For now, you rest your head on a cool marble step, the echo of harp strings drifting in from Aphrodite's garden. Lightning flickers gently behind the clouds, and the gods, just for a moment, seem at peace. The wind smells like smoke and wet stone. You're standing at the edge of the world, at least what counts as the world right now. No cities, no villages, just rolling hills, rivers carving through untamed land, and the occasional tree spirit giggling in the breeze. It's wild, quiet, way too quiet for Zeus's taste. Enter Prometheus. You watch him stride through the wilderness like he owns it. He doesn't, but he should. A titan, yes, but not the smash and burn variety. Prometheus is all brain, no brawl. He's the one who backed Zeus in the Titanomachy, not out of loyalty, but because he could see the chessboard 3 moves ahead. And now, he's about to make his boldest move yet. Prometheus wants to create something new, something weird, something flawed, something human. You squat in the dust beside him as he molds clay with his bare hands. It squishes under his fingers, soft and wet, until it starts to look like, well, a you. A kind of bipedal, hunched, nervous-looking version of you. He adds detail, fingers, toes, a brow furrowed with the anxiety of taxes and awkward small talk. Then he breathes life into it. Boom, humanity. At first, they're adorable, wobbling around, trying to figure out which mushrooms are not deadly. But the gods, not thrilled, especially Zeus. He sees them as fragile toys, not divine pets. He insists on keeping them cold, scared, and in the dark. But Prometheus, not a fan of unnecessary suffering. So, one night, while Olympus sleeps, or pretends to, Hera is definitely fake snoring. Prometheus sneaks up to the sacred hearth of the gods, steals fire, and carries it down to the humans in a hollow fennel stalk. Fire. Literal enlightenment, the original power-up. Warmth, cooking, metallurgy, tick-tock. Okay, maybe not that last one, but close enough. Flames crackle, sparks fly. Humanity leaps forward overnight. Now, here's your historical tidbit. Many ancient Greeks believed fire was a divine gift, and they lit ceremonial flames at temples to symbolize humanity's shared link with the gods. Hearths were sacred spaces, and stealing fire wasn't just theft, it was revolution. Of course, Zeus reacts the way you'd expect, like a divine landlord discovering someone's installed a hot tub without permission. He is livid, and Prometheus, he doesn't even apologize. He just shrugs and mutters something about ethics. This, predictably, does not go over well. Zeus hurls him far to the east, chains him to a jagged cliff in the Caucasus, and sentences him to daily liver munching. Yes, you heard that right. Every day, an eagle swoops in and eats his liver, which regenerates overnight. It's like a mythological loop of the worst spa treatment ever. Scholars still debate whether Prometheus's punishment reflects early Greek anxieties about technology and power, or if it's just the universe saying, don't mess with the top god's thermostat. But Zeus isn't done. He's got a second act. If Prometheus gave fire, Zeus will give Pandora. Crafted by Hephaestus from the finest materials, Pandora is a living work of art, graceful, curious, and carrying a gift box she's absolutely not supposed to open. You know where this is going. The gods each give her a trait: beauty, charm, curiosity, a sprinkle of doom. Then Zeus sends her down to humanity, like a birthday present with the world's worst card. Pandora tries to resist. She really does. But one day, she unlatches the lid. Out comes everything: sickness, war, jealousy, taxes, Mondays. The world is flooded with suffering. Humans scatter in fear. The sky darkens. But just before she slams the box shut, one last thing flutters out, something small and trembling. Hope. Fringe myth alert. Some versions say hope was never in the box, that it was placed after suffering as a cosmic consolation prize. Others argue that hope itself was the cruelest trick, keeping humans dreaming despite endless pain. Historians still argue whether this reflects optimism or the ancient version of toxic positivity. Either way, the damage is done. Prometheus is chained, Pandora's curiosity has triggered the age of human struggle, and Zeus. He's sitting in Olympus, arms crossed, saying, "Told you so." And yet, the world turns. Humans adapt. They build fires, carve tools, and pass stories around glowing embers. They name the stars. They start praying. Zeus hears them. The other gods do too. And suddenly, Olympus is a customer service line for divine requests. Demeter handles agriculture. Poseidon gets fishing and sailor complaints. Aphrodite, relationship drama. Hermes becomes the world's busiest delivery guy. You feel the shift in the air. Something's beginning. A new age. One where gods and humans keep brushing against each other. Sometimes gently, sometimes like bumper cars on fire. Prometheus, bleeding quietly in the shadows, smiles. Because the game has changed. The first city hasn't even been built yet. And already the gods are causing traffic on Earth. You wake one morning on a grassy slope, dew still clinging to your arms, only to spot Hermes sprinting past, winged sandals flapping, eyes twinkling like he's just stolen someone's Wi-Fi password. He's become the go-to for divine errands. Need to smuggle a soul to the underworld? Hermes. Want your dreams delivered express? Hermes. He once invented the lyre from a tortoise shell and conned Apollo out of a herd of sacred cattle. Trickster energy, maxed out. And that's the vibe now. The gods are mingling, meddling. They've taken to Earth like influencers to a photo op. Take Demeter, goddess of the harvest. You trail her through golden fields as she teaches humanity how to plant barley, press olives, and reap wheat without slicing off their own feet. For a while, it's bliss. Crops flourish. The land hums with life. Then one day, Demeter's daughter, Persephone, goes for a walk. You know that moment when the weather turns mid-sentence? Yeah, that. Suddenly the earth splits. Out rides Hades, chariot blazing, and just takes her. No warning, no chat with the mom, just classic. Abduction vibes, ancient Greek edition. Demeter flips. All the grass turns brown overnight. Rivers stop running. Winter is born. You try to eat an apple, but it turns to dust in your hand. The gods, for once, actually panic. Humanity is this close to extinction by famine, and even Zeus can't smooth it over with a lightning bolt. So, he negotiates. Persephone, it turns out, ate a few pomegranate seeds in the underworld, which, legally, binds her to it. Greeks had a weird thing about underworld produce. Eat nothing underground, kids. Compromise time, she'll split the year, half above with her mother, half below with her reluctant husband. And just like that, the seasons are born. Historical pause. This myth, many scholars agree, was likely a poetic explanation for seasonal agriculture cycles in ancient Greece. Spring marked Persephone's return, winter, her descent. A story carved into the soil itself. Now, you're standing at a banquet under blooming vines. Grapes overflow from baskets, flutes of wine in every hand, and in the middle of it all is Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and letting things get a little out of control. His worshippers dance barefoot until their feet bleed. His temples host frenzies where reality and identity blur into giggles and hallucinations. Fringe tidbit: some cults believe Dionysus was born twice. Once from a mortal woman, incinerated by Zeus's lightning, and again from Zeus's thigh. Yes, his thigh. You rub your temples. That's one baby shower you'd skip. But Dionysus isn't just a party god. He represents transformation, boundary breaking. Gender, fluid, reality, optional. Historians still debate whether his worship was an outlet for suppressed social rebellion or a sanctioned mental health break from rigid Greek norms. Either way, his festivals were wild. Meanwhile, the gods continue their greatest hobby, starting feuds. Apollo and Artemis, twin archers of the sun and moon, go on sibling missions. Apollo's off slaying Python at Delphi and claiming it as his sacred oracle site. Yes, that Delphi. You step inside the temple, the air thick with incense, where a priestess breathes volcanic vapors and mutters cryptic advice. It smells like burnt thyme and mystery. Fact time. The real oracle of Delphi was an actual position, held by a woman known as the Pythia, who sat atop a fissure believed to release gases from underground springs. Some scholars suggest these vapors may have caused trance-like states. So, yeah, your divine prophecy might have been chemically assisted. Artemis, meanwhile, roams the forests with her all-girl deer hunting squad, fiercely protective of her independence. One hunter accidentally sees her bathing and gets turned into a stag. Artemis, no chill, 100% boundaries. As the gods entrench their personalities, humans start carving them into statues, naming constellations after their whims, and building temples from white stone that gleam under the sun like cosmic fan mail. But the gods aren't always pleased. One day, a queen named Niobe boasts that she's better than Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis, because she has more kids. Big mistake. The twins descend and, one by one, strike down her children with precision that would make an archer weep. Niobe, frozen in grief, turns into a rock, literally, a weeping cliffside. You exhale. Being mortal in this age, high risk, zero benefits, no insurance. Still, humanity pushes on. You see them building small shrines, whispering prayers, inventing stories to make sense of drought, thunder, betrayal. They shape myth as myth shapes them. And above it all, the gods watch, jealous, curious, amused. Because the world is now a stage, and every sunrise could be another tragedy, or a comedy, depending on whether Hermes wrote the script. You wake up somewhere between myth and marble. The sun is rising over the Acropolis, though Athens itself hasn't been named yet. Still, you feel the rumble of something important, like the world is rehearsing civilization, and the gods are watching with popcorn. Today is a story of mortals daring to be interesting, and the gods immediately taking it way too personally. Let's begin with Arachne. You're in a dusty little workshop, where a young mortal woman sits at her loom, weaving patterns so intricate they practically shimmer. Birds perch nearby just to watch. People whisper, she's even better than Athena, which is basically begging the goddess of wisdom and crafts to show up uninvited. Athena does, in disguise of course, because gods love a dramatic reveal. She challenges Arachne to a weaving contest. The mortal doesn't flinch. They weave all day. Athena's tapestry is gorgeous and full of scenes glorifying the gods. Arachne's? Stunning. But also, spicy. It depicts gods cheating, lying, and transforming into animals to seduce mortals. Oof, it's accurate, and that's the problem. Athena loses it, shreds the tapestry, turns Arachne into a spider, condemned to weave forever. Historians still argue whether this tale reflects anxiety about pride or a deeper cultural warning against criticizing the divine. Either way, you now understand why spiders are always hiding in corners. Generational trauma, from loom rooms to smithies. You follow another mortal legend, Daedalus, brilliant inventor, total workaholic. He crafts wings, labyrinths, and weird wooden cows, don't ask. When King Minos hires him to build an inescapable maze for the Minotaur, Daedalus delivers. A perfect prison. But when Daedalus tries to quit, Minos locks him up. So he invents wings made of wax and feathers. You watch him strap them onto his son, Icarus, who's bouncing like it's field trip day. They fly higher, higher, until Icarus gets cocky, ignores Dad's warnings, and goes full catch me son mode. His wings melt, he plummets into the sea. You blink salt water from your eyes. Historical note: some believe the Icarus myth symbolized the dangers of overreaching ambition. In an age when hubris wasn't just frowned upon, it usually ended in death or transformation. Speaking of hubris, Bellerophon. You're in a city where a guy just tamed Pegasus, the literal winged horse. He slays the Chimera, a fire-breathing lion-goat-snake creature, and becomes so popular he starts thinking, hey, maybe I should ride Pegasus up to Olympus. Spoiler, not a good plan. Zeus dispatches a gadfly, Pegasus bucks, Bellerophon falls hard. Another mortal, another reminder, stay humble, or gravity will do it for you. But not all interactions with the gods end in tragedy. Sometimes they're complicated, like Orpheus and Eurydice. You find yourself in a misty meadow. Orpheus plays the lyre, and even the trees lean in to listen. His wife, Eurydice, is dancing when she steps on a venomous snake. Gone, Orpheus descends into the underworld, charming Cerberus, melting Hades' heart with song. He's told he can lead her out, if he doesn't look back. He almost makes it. Almost. One glance, and she vanishes forever. Historians still debate whether this story is about love, trust, or the fatal consequences of doubt. Either way, your chest aches. To cleanse the gloom, you trail Heracles, or Hercules, if you're feeling Roman. Born from Zeus's affair with a mortal, Shock, he's cursed with divine strength and a lot of personal tragedy. After being driven mad by Hera and killing his own family, PG-13 implied, he's assigned 12 labors to atone. You follow him through muck, monsters, and absurd tasks. Slaying the Nemean lion, whose fur is invincible. Cleaning the Augean stables, basically the worst bathroom situation in mythology. Capturing the Cyrenaean hind, a golden deer faster than your Wi-Fi. Each labor is more ridiculous than the last, and you can't help but admire how Heracles just keeps going, shoulders hunched, muscles aching, never stopping. Fun fringe fact: some versions say his final labor, capturing Cerberus, had a loophole, no weapons allowed. So Heracles just politely wrestled a three-headed hellhound. Casual. As Heracles ticks off his list, he becomes a symbol, not of perfection, but of persistence. Messy, broken, but always moving forward. You return to the edge of a cliff, watching ships below as mortals whisper of heroes and demigods. Their tales are blending with the gods now, tangled like vines. The age of myth is deepening, and soon, it'll be time for war. You're standing on a breezy hilltop overlooking the Aegean Sea, and something's brewing in the salty wind. It's not just storm clouds, it's destiny. The air practically vibrates with foreshadowing. You feel it in your bones. The gods are stirring, and mortals are about to take center stage in the biggest, bloodiest, most melodramatic crossover episode of the entire mythological canon. This is the beginning of the Trojan War. But before swords start clanging, we need to crash a wedding. You're slipping into the golden light of Mount Olympus, where all the gods are gathered to celebrate the marriage of Peleus and Thetis. It's lavish. Dionysus is already drunk. Aphrodite is checking her reflection in a goblet. Everything's perfect until someone shows up uninvited. Eris, goddess of discord. She's not here to toast the bride. She's here to start chaos. She tosses a golden apple into the crowd, engraved with 3 little words that will ruin kingdoms. To the fairest. Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena freeze mid-laugh. You see it in their eyes. They're all thinking, oh, this is definitely about me. They start bickering, then arguing, then threatening divine doom. Zeus, in a rare moment of wisdom, says, not it, and hands the decision off to a mortal, a shepherd named Paris, chilling near Troy, totally unaware that his life is about to become a mythology class final exam. The 3 goddesses appear before him, shimmering, smiling, and aggressively lobbying. Hera offers political power. Athena offers unmatched wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite? She promises him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, because he's tragically on brand for his age and species, chooses beauty. Helen of Sparta, soon to be known as Helen of Troy. Small issue, She's already married to Menelaus, the Spartan king. But Aphrodite makes good on her promise. Helen is either seduced or spirited away, depends on which scroll you're reading, and Paris sails home with the prize. Menelaus? Not thrilled. He calls up his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, who calls in every major Greek hero like it's the Avengers assembling. This is where the names start flying fast and furious. You've got Odysseus, cleverest man alive, reluctantly leaving his wife and newborn. Achilles, teenage demigod with rage issues and famously sensitive heels. Ajax, big sword, bigger ego. And a whole sea of others, all bound by an oath they once swore to defend Helen's marriage, because ancient Greek romance comes with legal contracts. They launch 1,000 ships, literally, and the war begins. Here's your historical anchor. Many scholars believe the Trojan War may be rooted in real conflicts between Mycenaean Greeks and the city of Wilusa, possibly Troy, in Anatolia. Archaeological digs have uncovered multiple layers of destruction at the site of Hisarlik, modern-day Turkey. But historians still argue whether the war was ever more than glorified oral poetry. You're now on the Trojan beaches, dodging arrows and poetic speeches. The war drags on for 10 years, and honestly, most of it is less epic battles and more squabbling, standoffs, and gods playing favorites like drunk game show hosts. Let's talk Achilles, the son of Thetis, yes, the sea goddess from the wedding, and Peleus. He's practically invincible, dipped in the river Styx as a baby, except for that pesky heel his mom held him by. He's fast, furious, and dangerously dramatic. But he refuses to fight after Agamemnon steals his war prize, aka a captive woman named Briseis, which is just ancient Greece's very problematic way of showing you who's who in the hero hierarchy. Achilles sulks in his tent for most of the early war, letting his fellow Greeks get wrecked. Enter Patroclus, his closest companion. Some say cousin, others say best friend, others whisper lover. Either way, Patroclus borrows Achilles' armor to inspire the troops. He fights valiantly until Hector, Trojan prince and all-around good guy, kills him. Cue the rage of Achilles. He returns to battle, slaughters Hector in single combat, and drags his body around the walls of Troy for days. It's brutal. Even the gods are like, whoa, maybe chill? Eventually, King Priam of Troy sneaks into the Greek camp and begs Achilles for his son's body. Achilles, finally touched by mortal grief, returns Hector to his father. It's one of the quietest, most human moments in the whole epic. Fringe fact, some versions of the myth say Achilles was later killed by Paris, guided by Apollo, with an arrow to the heel. Others suggest it wasn't the heel at all, but a poetic invention by later writers looking for symbolism. Historians still debate the accuracy and origin of the Achilles heel idea. Back on the battlefield, the war is winding toward its infamous climax. Because brute force hasn't worked, the Greeks switch to cleverness. Specifically, Odysseus' most iconic brainstorm, the Trojan horse. You hide with him in the wooden belly of the beast as the gift is wheeled into Troy. That night, while the city sleeps and celebrates, the Greeks spill out, unlock the gates, and sack the city. Flames rise, Priam is slain, women are dragged away. The myth doesn't end cleanly. It ends in smoke and screams. And Helen? She survives. In most versions, she's whisked back to Sparta, her face still the one that launched 1,000 ships and 1,000 arguments about free will, love, and war. The gods, meanwhile, are eerily quiet. You wonder if even they regret what they've set in motion. But there's no time to mourn, because the real trouble starts after the war. Smoke still clings to your clothes as you step through the ruins of Troy. The fires have mostly gone out, but the ash hangs in the air like a curse. The war may be over, but nobody's celebrating. The city lies broken, its people scattered or enslaved, and the victors? Well, they're not exactly riding off into the sunset. Now comes the part where you learn something unfortunate about Greek myth. There are no clean endings. Take Odysseus, for example. He's the cleverest of the Greeks, inventor of the Trojan horse, charmer of kings and monsters. And yet, it will take him 10 whole years to get home. Why? Because he has a little problem called the gods have beef with him now, especially Poseidon. You're sailing beside Odysseus and his crew as they leave Troy. The sea is calm for about 2 minutes, and then, bam, A storm hits, ships are scattered, and suddenly you're island hopping through danger like a very cursed. Travel influencer. First stop, the land of the lotus eaters. It's paradise, until your crew eats the local plants and forgets they ever wanted to leave. You have to drag them back to the ship like toddlers at a theme park gift shop. Next, the Cyclops. You land in a cave, find food, and then the giant Polyphemus shows up. One eye, terrible manners, and a taste for humans. He eats a few of your men and blocks the exit. You outwit him with wine and a sharp stick to the eye. The twist? You escape by yelling your real name during your getaway, because of course you do. Poseidon, Polyphemus' dad, hears it and goes, "Cool, now I ruin your life." Historians still argue whether Odysseus' tale is a cautionary epic or a deeply sarcastic commentary on ego and consequence. Either way, you're getting seasick just watching. Next, you wash up on the island of Circe, a witch goddess who turns your men into pigs. Luckily, you've got an herb, thanks Hermes, and she's impressed. You end up staying for a year, which says something about Circe's hospitality, and possibly her hotness. Then there's a trip to the underworld, because obviously that's a thing people do now. You meet ghosts of fallen comrades, hear prophecies, and learn you still have many nightmares to sail through, like the sirens, whose songs lure sailors to their doom. Odysseus plugs his crew's ears with wax, but has himself tied to the mast so he can listen. He does hear them, but just barely survives the temptation. Then there's Scylla and Charybdis, a six-headed monster and a ship-swallowing whirlpool. You steer too close to Scylla, lose 6 men in one chomp, and sail on, traumatized but alive. And the gods aren't done with you. You land on the island of the sun, god Helios, where your starving crew ignores every warning and eats the sacred cattle. You're like, seriously? But too late. Zeus smites the ship. You alone survive. Washed up on Calypso's island, you're offered immortality and love. You stay for 7 years. 7. Time slips strangely here. Days feel like hours, then suddenly decades have passed. Eventually the gods let you go. You build a raft, brave yet another storm, and finally, reach Ithaca. But home? Not exactly welcoming. Everyone thinks you're dead. Suitors are swarming your house, trying to marry your wife, Penelope, and steal your throne. She's been cleverly stalling them by weaving a shroud during the day and unraveling it by night. Absolute queen behavior. You disguise yourself, win a contest with your old beau, and take revenge. Arrow to the neck, chaos in the halls. You reunite with Penelope. It's bittersweet because you're older now. Wiser, weary, but you made it. Fringe tidbit. Some versions say Odysseus never really finds peace. Later stories claim he was killed by his own son, born of a brief, forgotten affair. Mythology loves a tragic footnote. And he's not the only hero struggling. Agamemnon, remember him? The one who led the Greeks? He sails home expecting applause and instead gets murdered in the bathtub by his wife, Clytemnestra, who's furious he sacrificed their daughter, Iphigenia, to get good wins for the war. Awkward family dinner. Their son, Orestes, grows up and eventually kills her to avenge his dad, which leads to divine punishment, madness, and a landmark court case on the ethics of revenge. Yes, mythology basically invents courtroom drama. Meanwhile, the Trojan survivors aren't doing great either. Aeneas, a Trojan prince, flees the city carrying his father on his back and holding his little boy's hand. It's one of the few moments where mythology quietly tugs at your heartstrings, without the usual divine fireworks. He wanders like Odysseus, eventually making his way to Italy, where his descendants will found Rome. Well, eventually. He gets sidetracked by Dido, queen of Carthage, who falls madly in love with him. But fate calls. He leaves. She dies by suicide, cursing him and his descendants, which, according to Roman myth, explains the future Punic Wars. Historians still debate whether Aeneas was a late invention by Roman poets to legitimize their empire's Trojan ancestry, or whether he had roots in older Mediterranean legends. Either way, his story blends Greek tragedy with Roman ambition. You're floating now through a post-war world where heroes are broken, kingdoms are shifting, and the gods have started stepping back. The age of heroes is ending, and the world is waking up to something newer, something mortal, something almost real. You're walking through a world that's quieter now. No more godly tantrums shaking the skies, at least not as often. The age of heroes has burned out like a comet, leaving embers behind. Old swords rusting in ruined cities, stories echoing in campfires and crumbling temples. But just because the thunder's gone doesn't mean the myths have ended. Now you find yourself brushing shoulders with something stranger, the aftermath. And right in the middle of that aftermath, standing taller than the rest, is Heracles, or as the Romans will later call him, Hercules. He's no prince with a shiny destiny or a tragic war veteran. He's a demigod born into chaos, hated from birth by Hera, queen of the gods, because he's yet another one of Zeus's many, many extracurricular mistakes. You meet him as a baby, crushing 2 serpents in his crib like plush toys. No pacifier needed, just superhuman strength and a glare that says, "I bench press monsters." But his life isn't a power fantasy, it's a punishment. After being driven temporarily mad by Hera, Heracles kills his wife and children. The gods, in their ever-gracious way, offer him redemption the old-fashioned way, labor, 12 of them to be exact. You tag along as he begins the labors of Heracles, a mythic to-do list that ranges from ridiculous to outright impossible. Slay the Nemean lion. Its skin is impenetrable, so he wrestles it barehanded, skins it with its own claw, and wears it like a hoodie. Kill the Hydra. You chop 1 head off, 2 grow back. Heracles brings fire. Classic solve. Capture the golden hind, a deer sacred to Artemis. He apologizes profusely as he nabs it. Honestly, it's kind of sweet. Clean the Augean stables. Thousands of cows, never cleaned. He reroutes a river and power washes it. Call it mythological plumbing. Fringe fact, the original stories were likely much more localized folk tales of a strongman hero. Heracles only became this cosmic Marvel-style character much later, as Greek culture spread. You keep following him, from the Erymanthian boar to the Cretan bull, the mares of Diomedes, the Amazonian queen's girdle, the cattle of Geryon, the apples of the Hesperides, and finally, a casual kidnapping of Cerberus, the 3-headed hellhound of the underworld. Yes, he walks into Hades, pets the dog, and walks back out. Historians still argue whether these labors represent conquest myths, symbolic internal battles, or just 12 excuses to show off Heracles' gym routine. But even after he finishes them all, peace eludes him. He marries again. It ends badly. His wife, tricked into thinking a poison cloak will win back his love, accidentally kills him. Heracles burns alive on a funeral pyre. His screams echo up to Olympus. But instead of dying fully, he ascends, becoming a god. He's the only mortal to earn that honor through sheer suffering and sweat. You wonder if even the gods felt a little guilty. But Heracles' shadow is long. His stories sprawl across centuries, cultures, even continents. He becomes a mascot of strength, of wild redemption. His myths are stitched into everything, from Greek temples to Roman mosaics to your modern gym posters. Still, not all stories after Troy are about muscle and monsters. You slip into darker alleys of myth now, following whispers instead of war cries. You hear of Oedipus, king of Thebes, the man who tries to outwit prophecy and ends up marrying his mother and gouging out his eyes. His story is a spiral of fate tightening around free will until there's no air left. Then comes his daughter, Antigone, who buries her brother against royal orders and pays the price. Her tale echoes through history as a question. What do you do when law and love collide? And still deeper, you find the shadows of Orpheus and Eurydice. He's a musician so talented even stones weep. When his beloved dies, he journeys to the underworld, charms Hades and Persephone with his song, and is told he can lead Eurydice back to life, if he doesn't look back. You already know how that ends. One glance, gone forever. Myth is never just monsters and gods. It's sorrow, choices, regrets. It's humanity dressed in divine metaphors. Even in these softer, stranger corners, you catch glimpses of old themes: hubris, fate, loyalty, the slow crumbling of ancient glories. You start to see what mythology really is, not just bedtime stories for ancient Greeks, but a map of everything they feared and loved and couldn't explain. A story of how humans stared into the sky, didn't understand what they saw, and made gods to fill the gaps. And now those gods are fading, slowly, like stars at sunrise. The age of philosophy is peeking over the horizon. But before we leave the myths behind entirely, you've still got one more story to climb. The one that tries to explain everything. You wake up to a world where the gods don't quite answer anymore. The sky feels emptier, the temples quieter. It's the dawn of Greek philosophy, and you're stepping into a slow, steady unraveling of myths by reason. Think of it as a dimming of the divine spotlight, replaced by human curiosity's gentle glow. You find yourself in Ionia, a cluster of sun-drenched city-states on the coast of Asia Minor. Here, curious minds start asking a dangerous question. What is the world really made of? Not who made it, or why the gods are angry today, but what? Meet Thales of Miletus, often called the first philosopher. He says everything's made of water. Yes, water, because it's the source of life and it changes form endlessly, like the universe itself. You might chuckle, but this was revolutionary. It was the first time someone tried to explain the cosmos without myth or magic. Then there's Anaximander, who argues that the world comes from the aperon, an infinite, indefinite substance that contains all opposites like hot and cold, wet and dry. Imagine the universe as a giant cosmic soup that keeps stirring itself. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. Some ancient philosophers speculated that humans evolved from fish, or even that the Earth floated freely in space. Wild ideas that make you realize ancient thinkers were way ahead of their time. You wander through the pre-Socratic era, where thinkers like Heraclitus claim everything flows, famously saying, "You can't step into the same river twice. The world is in constant flux." Meanwhile, Parmenides insists change is an illusion, and reality is one eternal, unchanging being. This philosophical tug-of-war shapes centuries of debate. Historians still argue about how much these early thinkers influenced each other, and how much their fragments are poetic riddles versus early science. You drift toward the next wave, where philosophy becomes more systematic. Enter Socrates, the guy who probably never wrote a word himself, but invented a style of questioning that stings the ego like 1,000 mosquito bites. He strolls the streets of Athens, poking holes in people's beliefs with his Socratic method, asking simple questions that reveal deep ignorance. You might want to hide if he's coming your way. He refuses to accept easy answers or gods as just stories. Instead, he insists on ethics and self-knowledge. Know thyself becomes the mantra. His students are captivated, terrified, and confused all at once. One student, Plato, writes down Socrates' ideas and builds on them. You follow Plato into his allegorical cave, where prisoners see shadows on the wall and mistake them for reality. The real world is outside, blinding but true. Plato imagines a realm of forms, perfect eternal ideas behind every imperfect thing you see. He creates the blueprint for Western philosophy and political thought. His student, Aristotle, disagrees on almost everything, grounding philosophy in observation, biology, and logic. You walk through Aristotle's Lyceum, debating ethics, politics, and the nature of the soul. Together, these thinkers lay the foundation for science and reason, shifting the world from mythic explanations to inquiry and evidence. But the gods? They don't disappear overnight. They linger in poetry, ritual, and the hearts of the people. You realize mythology and philosophy aren't enemies, but dance partners, circling each other in the great human attempt to understand life's mysteries. As you watch the Athenian sun set behind the Acropolis, you hear the faint echo of Homeric heroes fading, replaced by the clear, steady voice of human thought. Yet, myths will always hold a secret power, because stories don't just explain the world, they shape how we live in it. And somewhere, deep beneath the logic, the old gods smile. The streets of Athens are alive with chatter, citizens debating politics, poets reciting verses, and philosophers arguing under the shade of olive trees. You step into this vibrant chaos and find yourself in the middle of the golden age of Athens, a time when art, drama, and ideas bloom like wildflowers after a spring rain. You hear the distant applause of a theater audience as Sophocles' tragedy unfolds on stage. His plays aren't just entertainment, they're moral puzzles wrapped in blood and fate, like the tale of Oedipus, which keeps audiences asking, how much control do we really have over our destiny? But the theater isn't the only place buzzing. You see Pericles, the great statesman, steering Athens towards democracy and empire, funding public works, temples, and festivals. The Parthenon rises, a gleaming symbol of human achievement and divine favor. You wander marketplaces where Socrates engages eager listeners, questioning everything. His stubborn refusal to back down from his inquiries lands him in hot water with the powers that be. Eventually, he's sentenced to death by poison. You watch as his final moments unfold, calm and unyielding, embodying the very philosophy he preached. The examined life is worth living, even dying for. But there's a new wave of thinkers, the sophists, who argue that truth is relative, that success depends on persuasion, not absolute morality. They teach rhetoric, shaping future politicians and lawyers. You sense the tension between objective ideals and practical power playing out like a quiet war. In the background, the Peloponnesian War rages, a brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta that drains the city's strength and faith. You hear whispers that the war, more than any plague or execution, cracks the found. Aetions of Athenian confidence. Amid this turbulence, Plato records Socrates' dialogues and builds his vision of a perfect society ruled by philosopher kings, challenging the messy reality around him. Meanwhile, Aristotle focuses on categorizing the natural world, ethics and logic, his work destined to influence minds for millennia. Fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe that the ideas emerging from this era influenced not only Western civilization, but also early scientific thought in the Islamic Golden Age centuries later. Historians still debate whether Athens' democracy was as inclusive as celebrated or primarily a system for privileged male citizens. As the sun sets, you see Athens shimmering, a city of brilliance and contradictions, where democracy and tyranny, art and war, philosophy and politics collide. You feel the pulse of a civilization wrestling with itself, trying to define what it means to be human. This is the heartbeat of classical Greece. The dust settles from the Peloponnesian War, and you find yourself in a Greece no longer dominated by Athens but fragmented. City-states at odds, alliances broken, and a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air like a stubborn morning fog. Enter Philip II of Macedon, a king with an eye for strategy and a mouth full of ambition. You watch him transform Macedonia from a backwater kingdom into a military powerhouse through smart reforms, a phalanx army, and, well, some ruthless politics. His son, Alexander, is next. You've probably heard the name, Alexander the Great, but standing next to him, you feel the sheer energy of a young man destined to rewrite the map. At just 20, Alexander inherits his father's throne and sets off on an epic campaign to conquer the Persian Empire. You're there as he crosses the Hellespont, leading a small army into what seems like the edge of the world. His charisma is magnetic, his tactics brilliant. He defeats Darius III at Issus and Gaugamela, shattering the vast Persian Empire like a glass ornament. Yet Alexander isn't just a conqueror, he's also a cultural blender. You witness him founding cities named after himself, encouraging marriages between Macedonians and Persians, and spreading Greek language and ideas all the way to India. Fringe tidbit. Some ancient accounts say Alexander drank so much that he nearly died in his late 20s, but that didn't stop him from pushing further into unknown lands. You start to see how Greek culture morphs into something new. Hellenistic, a blend of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian influences. Historians still argue whether Alexander was a visionary uniter or a ruthless imperialist whose empire collapsed too soon. Back home, the Greek city-states lose their independence, their golden age fading as new empires rise. But Alexander's legacy is more than military conquest. It's the spread of ideas, art, and science across continents, planting seeds for centuries of cultural exchange. And while the great heroes of myth and classical philosophy fade into history, the world they shaped grows larger, more complex, and endlessly fascinating. You can't help but wonder what comes next. You find yourself drifting through the rich, vibrant tapestry of the Hellenistic world, where the once sharply defined edges of Greek city-states blur into a sprawling, multicultural empire stretching from Egypt to India. Here, the old gods mingle with foreign deities, philosophies intermingle, and science takes bold leaps forward. You visit Alexandria, Egypt, a dazzling city built by Alexander's generals, designed to be a beacon of knowledge and culture. The Great Library looms large, a temple to human curiosity housing hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Scholars from all corners of the known world gather here, chasing questions about the stars, the human body, and the nature of reality. You meet Euclid, who writes the book on geometry, literally his elements becoming a cornerstone of mathematics for centuries. Nearby, Eratosthenes calculates the Earth's circumference with surprising accuracy, making you wonder how often ancient thinkers nailed the truth while everyone else was still guessing. Philosophy evolves too. You find yourself listening to Epicurus, who teaches that happiness comes from simple pleasures and freedom from fear, and Zeno of Citium, who found Stoicism, preaching calm acceptance of life's hardships. These philosophies become lifelines for people facing political chaos and uncertainty. Fringe tidbit: some Hellenistic scientists believed the brain, not the heart, was the seat of intelligence, an idea centuries ahead of its time. You witness how art shifts as well. Sculptures and paintings show more emotion and realism, portraying gods, heroes, and ordinary people with raw human feelings. Historians still debate how much this cultural melting pot influenced later Roman art, religion, and philosophy. As kingdoms rise and fall, you see that the Hellenistic age is less about political unity and more about cultural fusion, where ideas spread like wildfire, transcending borders and blending traditions. It's a world in flux, beautiful and fragile, where the echoes of the old myths still mingle with the promise of reason and discovery. And as night falls over Alexandria's lighthouse, one of the ancient wonders, you feel the pulse of human progress, messy, radiant, unstoppable. As the Hellenistic world slowly gives way to Roman dominance, you watch the shifting tides of power reshape the Mediterranean landscape. Rome is no longer the sleepy city of farmers and warriors you might have expected. It's growing into a sprawling republic, hungry for expansion, and armed with an army that seems nearly unstoppable. You find yourself in the middle of the Punic Wars, epic clashes between Rome and the mighty Carthage. The Second War is where you really get hooked, seeing the legendary Hannibal Barca cross the Alps with elephants, an image as wild and impossible as any myth. But Rome's discipline and resources eventually grind down Hannibal's bold gambit, and Carthage falls. With the Punic Wars over, Rome turns its attention eastward, absorbing the Hellenistic kingdoms into its growing empire. Roman culture swallows Greek art, philosophy, and religion, repackaging them for a new audience. You stroll through Rome's Forum, the heart of its political life, feeling the pulse of a republic experimenting with democracy, law, and citizenship, though still deeply unequal. You catch glimpses of Julius Caesar, a man whose ambition will reshape Rome forever. His crossing of the Rubicon River becomes a line you know well, one that symbolizes irrevocable choice and the collapse of the Republic. With Caesar's assassination, Rome plunges into chaos and civil war, but out of that chaos rises Augustus, the first emperor. Under Augustus, Rome stabilizes and flourishes, embracing a new political order cloaked in republican forms, but wielding imperial power. Greek philosophy lives on, influencing Roman thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, the latter famously blending Stoic wisdom with his role as emperor, trying to find peace amid political storms. Fringe tidbit: Roman concrete, used to build enduring structures like the Pantheon's dome, was a technological marvel lost for centuries and only rediscovered in modern times. Historians still argue about how much Rome preserved Greek culture versus transforming it beyond recognition. As you watch the empire's roads stretch across continents, connecting diverse peoples, you realize that the Greek myths and philosophies you followed have become part of something larger, an ancient foundation for Western civilization itself. The gods may be silent now, but their stories live on, woven into the fabric of history, culture, and the human imagination. The centuries roll on, and you find yourself drifting through the twilight of the ancient world. The Roman Empire, vast and mighty, now stands on shaky legs, facing pressures from within and without. Political intrigue, economic troubles, and waves of invasions. Christianity rises quietly, then boldly, transforming religious and cultural landscapes that once revolved around the Greek and Roman gods you've come to know so well. But before the old world slips away, You catch glimpses of its final echoes. You hear the voice of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor whose meditations are a Stoic guidebook, written not for glory, but for survival in turbulent times. His reflections remind you that amid chaos, the best you can do is focus on what's within your control, your thoughts, actions, and character. You witness how the great myths evolve, adapting to new beliefs and political realities, morphing into symbols, art, and literature that will inspire generations to come. Fringe tidbit: some of the oldest surviving copies of Greek myths were found in papyrus scraps reused for Christian texts, showing how old and new worlds literally overlapped. Historians still debate how much classical thought influenced medieval and Renaissance Europe, but one thing's clear: the stories, ideas, and values you've traced remain a powerful undercurrent. As you watch the sun set on the classical era, you feel a quiet awe. What started as wild tales of gods and monsters became a vast human endeavor, a search for meaning, identity, and understanding. And though empires fall and centuries pass, the stories remain. They are the whispers in the night, the flicker of firelight, the soft murmur of a voice inviting you to listen. Now, as you prepare to drift off yourself, remember this: you're part of that story too. The myths and philosophies you've journeyed through aren't just ancient history. They're threads woven into the fabric of who you are. Rest easy, knowing that you carry a spark of that timeless human quest for wisdom and wonder. Hey, you made it. That was quite the journey, wasn't it? From fiery gods hurling lightning bolts to quiet philosophers questioning the stars. You've wandered through a world where myths and reality danced together, where heroes wrestled monsters and ideas wrestled ignorance. The ancient stories you heard tonight are more than just tales. They're echoes of human curiosity, resilience, and imagination reaching across time. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, let the ancient winds carry you gently into sleep. Picture the Aegean Sea's soft waves lapping against sun-warmed stones, the faint scent of olive groves, and the distant, peaceful hum of a lyre's melody. The gods have settled, the philosophers have paused their debates, and the world quiets. Remember, these myths and thoughts aren't locked away in dusty scrolls. They live inside you, in the questions you ask, the stories you tell, and the dreams you dare to dream. So breathe deep, let the day's worries fade, and rest in the soft glow of history's gentle light. Tomorrow, the story continues, because the past isn't just behind you, it's inside you. Good night, friend.